The following content contains personal experiences of our hosts and guests. We are not experts in this matter. We encourage challenging conversations with others and to achieve healing from our childhood. We hope to connect and allow a safe space to have an open discussion. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a qualified professional, diagnosis, or treatment.
And if you want some fresh calamansi from Tiff Street.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. I harvested it this morning.
Where
Hence, I was a little late today, but, you know.
Can I pick this up?
Yeah.
Cool?
Yeah, please.
Oh, my gosh.
Right?
Yeah. I as a Vietnamese kid growing up, we had these too, but I didn't know that they were like a Filipino thing.
I mean, I didn't know either until I moved out here.
Yeah.
I lived with you guys.
We always had it somehow, some way. Like, you add it to the pancit,
Yeah.
adobo marinade. It's
Adobo.
like,
It's
it's
so
ingrained
universal.
in the food.
Yeah, it totally is.
And
That's
fortunate
awesome.
enough, we grow a tree in our backyard.
Yeah.
So I had to harvest more. Like, the heat wave just like demolished a bunch of
Oh,
them.
man.
So like I've been
no.
trimming.
the small ones, the ones that survived,
Yeah, so that's. I hope they're still good. Some of them might be a little squishy, but
look fine.
the green ones are good.
That one on the bottom looks like it's dying. But
The heat wave demolished a lot of
I
the
know
fruit.
what the heck was up with that, but I mean it's getting better now. So
It's so nice. It's like fall.
I
Fall is
know,
here.
yeah,
hopefully.
finally.
that's why I'm wearing this like
PSL.
I know,
I'm
I
a
was gonna
walking
say.
I'm a walking PSL right now.
Yes. All right, everyone. Welcome to First Gen Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Nina Flores, and
And I'm Tiffany Kristie. Welcome back.
welcome. We have a pleasure of having Pat, my friend and former coworker, on the show. Welcome, Pat, and
Yeah.
thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Really excited.
Yeah. I know that you grew up in the Bay Area, so I would love to hear about how your parents met, what your experience was like growing up there before you moved to LA.
Well, that's a very general, loaded topic.
Do you need
Which
me to
is-
We
like?
start general.
Yeah,
We
do you
start
want me
Which is
to
general,
fine.
and then
No,
we-
I
then
don't
we
think there's
whittle
anything bad
down.
about it. I think there's a lot to be said.
Okay.
Um,
Do you want me to pinpoint?
pinpoint. Oh wow, we're bringing that back.
This,
This is,
oh,
it's
This is
a-
an old
that's a term.
work
That's-
term.
okay.
Yeah,
You gotta quit. So,
it's okay. Growing up in the Bay Area, I think at the time, right? This was for everyone's reference. I'm 29 years old, San Francisco, California, and growing up there then is much different than growing up there now. I think. Grew up through the public schooling system, and I was raised mainly by my single father. He had me when he was 22 years old, which is crazy.
Young.
wow.
Yeah,
really young.
super young. But I'm actually meeting a lot of people that are having similar stories. Like their parents had them really young, so it's like not the most uncommon thing. I mean, I think everything that's happened led me to where I am now, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm continue to be excited for the future, but yeah, mainly raised by my dad, and we had one house on Sunset, in Sunset Boulevard, or not Boulevard, in the Sunset District, which was like 20 blocks from the beach. Yeah, it was super nice, like
nice.
prime real estate. The house we still have in our family. My uncle is now the owner of it. Like we moved around quite a bit, but that was the place where we ended up at, all over San Francisco, and then eventually I think first grade, I went to an elementary school called Uloa Elementary School. Beautiful, right next to the beach, like even closer than the house I was living at. And we had a bunch of uncles living with us, aunts. So my dad's the oldest sibling, right? And he's got 4 siblings.
Wow.
And we were all packed up in the house, right? Obviously, like we moved here from Vietnam, our family, and I was the first born in the States, essentially. Actually, no, I'm lying. My dad actually has 5 siblings. I'm not counting my. I have an uncle who's 2 years older than me.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
We understand.
We
You get that,
understand.
right?
Yeah.
It's an Asian
Maybe
thing.
it's because the wide
Yeah.
range
Exactly.
of siblings
You know, just
having them.
things happen. You know. I was an accident, I think. That's what I'm always told that. So,
Nothing wrong with that.
nothing wrong with that. You know,
Yeah, nothing wrong with
thank
that.
God they decided to keep me.
It's a blessing. It's a blessing.
Otherwise, we wouldn't
Yeah.
have the joy of having you here.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I never would have had the chance to do my first podcast.
Well, we were joking like before we
Mm-hmm.
came on here, saying you're like an honorary Filipino. I mean, you know, you have a tita.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, in the Bay Area. Again, I grew up in Minnesota. Tiff grew up in LA. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, were there more like Asian Americans there? Were there more Filipinos? Like, what
Yeah.
was that
Okay.
culture like?
What was that like?
Yeah.
Okay, so I grew up in the Sunset. There were a good amount of Filipinos. My best friend, I haven't talked to him since elementary school, but lots of Chinese. Right? I'm part Vietnamese Chinese,
Okay.
so I think I'm like a quarter Chinese, and I'm apparently too Vietnamese or not Vietnamese enough to be Vietnamese, and I'm not Chinese enough to be Chinese. So like, can I swear on here?
Yes.
Like, what
please.
the fuck am I? So yeah, I struggled with that a bit, and honestly, at some point, I just stopped caring because all my friends were just diverse, right? We had a lot of like Hispanics, we had Italians, we had just white kids, we had African Americans. Like my friend group growing up was quite diverse.
Nice.
I wasn't really even like exposed to the whole like, thinking about it, I actually had a pretty good childhood. I wasn't exposed to the whole like race thing. I didn't really think of myself as too different. I thought I was different in other ways, which we'll probably have to get to later. But yeah, like I found myself gravitating towards Asians, not because they were Asian. I don't think I was like, oh, they look like me, so I should hang out with them.
Yeah.
Right. So I would always go to like John's family's house after school, which he lived literally a block away from where I was living. So, and he had like the Sega Genesis and the PS PlayStation 1 or something. And we played like Star Wars, Battlefront. It was awesome. And his grandma, or his
Lola.
his Lola, yes. She always fed us. Right.
Oh, yes, the food.
And so like the Filipino culture has been ingrained in, or at least the food has been ingrained in me since, as early as I can remember. I honestly, like, even to this day, like, I'm still living with Filipinos, as you know.
Yeah.
And they're feeding me. It's awesome. Honestly, I love the food. But yeah, like I think in the Bay Area, there was a huge concentration of Filipinos and Vietnamese in this place, Daly City, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with, right? Which is like, anyways, my friends and I, we actually would bike everywhere. We would bike all the way out to the pier sometimes. We just went and grabbed food. I don't know, like, it wasn't like I think it was a pretty interesting dynamic, just having a lot of different cultures around the area. But also it was developing pretty quickly that time in the Bay Area to eventually getting to where it is now, which is like a huge tech center, right, of the world, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious, because when I was growing up, my parents, like in Minnesota, they just wanted us to fit in and be Americanized. So
Okay,
I didn't
okay.
really grow up with the traditions. Tiff is your experience is a little different than mine. I'm curious, like, did your dad, like, did you guys like celebrate any Vietnamese traditions? Did he like try to immerse you into that culture? Or was he just kind of like, hey, you do your thing and you explore?
That's a good question. Yes, we definitely had more, I would say nowadays we're doing more Vietnamese stuff. Maybe because my dad's dating a Vietnamese woman, so.
Oh, okay.
But I think growing up, I learned how to speak Chinese growing up,
Oh.
like Cantonese.
Oh, I
so
didn't
like
know
I'm fluent
that.
in that.
Oh, that's cool.
very useful, knowing Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of businesses out there.
Exactly.
It's very useful.
Exactly. We had a pretty big family, and at the time, maybe when I was around 8 to 12 or 8 to 10, like we always had like in that 2 year span, we'd always have like these massive parties, and then we'd have our neighbors come over for like, different. We also had Vietnamese food and Chinese food. It was weird. Like I didn't think it was weird, but I guess looking back at it, it's like, wow, there's a lot of just a smorgasbord of cultures and stuff.
It sounds delicious.
It's awesome. We had like our neighbors come join us, and our neighbors weren't even Asian,
Mm-hmm.
So I think I think personally in that regard, with terms of race and inequality and stuff like that, I wasn't really exposed to too much of that. Luckily, right? It's weird because I think it's becoming more, in a way, it's becoming more prevalent nowadays, or maybe that's just me. So I don't know.
Okay.
Hey, the food brings everyone together.
Food does bring it.
That's,
Yeah.
I think across the board.
Food, music.
Food and music.
Yeah.
Yes.
The universal love language.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Curious to know, like you mentioned, your father
Mm-hmm.
is one of the oldest in the family, right?
He was
And
the oldest sibling.
The oldest
Yeah.
sibling. How was that dynamic? It sounded like a lot of the family, like he welcomed everyone to his home, and he had to like take care of his other siblings. And did you also grow up with a bunch of cousins as well?
Yes. Okay. Yes. I think I am the oldest of, I want to say upwards of 30 cousins.
Woohoo!
Yeah. So
Similar.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
We lost count. I don't even.
There's more every year. So
On our mom's side, it's 13 brothers and sisters.
holy shit.
I mean, 4 of them are like half brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
But yeah. So we know.
Okay. Yeah. It's just there's just more. There's just multiplying. Every year, you're just
The
like,
more the merrier.
what's your name again?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then soon as, like sooner than later, it's just like, who are you? Like they just grow up so fast, and they hit puberty. And anyways.
Yeah.
So my dad was the oldest sibling out of 5 siblings, and he always had that like mentality, and he still does, where he's like setting the example, and he's setting the bar for his siblings, right? And I think a lot of that had to do, sorry Dad if you're watching this, with his own insecurities, right? And he's done a lot of healing personally in the last few years, and we're like closer than we've ever been. So growing up, it was really tough with him because he had this like very rigid image of like what life should be like for him, for his siblings, for me, right? The way things should be done, right? And I think that's a very common thing, right? With the house monarchs or masculine figures.
Yeah.
Patriarch.
There you go. That's the word. And to this day, he's still doing that, but in a more subtle way to like his siblings. He'll like, I don't know. He'll just bring up like, he'll find smart ways to make my aunts and uncles like rethink their choices, right? And it's weird growing up as I'm getting older now. I'm like, I see where my dad's coming from, and like I don't think he's wrong. I think he's still learning how to not to project his own expectations on everyone. But growing up for me, that was all it was, right? He had his specific sort of image of what I should do, and like he's a neat freak, right? He's very OCD, I tell them all the time, if you see his house, like it's spotless. He lives in San Mateo, California now. Beautiful home. Like everything's just like sleek, straight, square. It's like, in many ways, my dad's a square. But he's
in a box.
He's working out of it now. Like I think throughout growing, this has become a podcast about my dad. I swear. Sorry, it's not like the most natural thing for me to talk about myself.
Hey,
No,
we're
you
in this,
sound very.
We're in this.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. This is why.
Yeah.
It's already hard enough for me to have this podcast as a platform to express myself, because
Yeah.
that's not naturally what
Yeah.
I grew up with,
Yeah.
right? Like, we were told to just be silent, obedient,
100%.
just do what I say type of thing.
Yeah.
And we didn't have, my sister and I just didn't have that avenue to express ourselves. So
Yeah.
I'm also learning as an adult how to now express myself.
Yeah.
And it is very hard. It's
We're-
hard to say my feelings, so I hear you.
Yeah.
I'm there too. It's just like, oh, you want to learn about me, my background?
It's like, what
I've never talked about it.
is that normal?
Yeah. It's like, oh,
Is there something else going on here? Yeah.
right.
You start to
So it
second
is
guess.
very outside the comfort zone.
Yeah.
So thank you for being
Yeah.
open,
Of course.
to
You
talking
know,
about it. And
I originally, like, I was excited to do this because I know there was a lot of work I think Nina had done around her background as well, right? And like the fact that even at work we were talking about some more personal topics, right? And I was like, wow, like she gets it. And then she told me a lot of great things about you and how you've dealt with quite a bit, right? And I think that's just really all we're here to do is like learn and grow from our mistakes and change kind of the trajectory of our futures, our family's futures, right?
Yeah.
Cycle breakers, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think when we share stories, we gain wisdom and we learn from other people, and it helps us to discover something about ourselves that maybe we didn't know, and that helps us grow. And so I know you're a very spiritual person. I am too. So is Tiff. And
Yeah.
all of these experiences that you've had as a child, I'm sure has contributed to that. So
Yeah.
I kind of want to dive into that if you're comfortable talking about it. And also, I know that your dad was raising you. So just curious, like, was your mom part of your life, or what happened
Yeah.
there?
Let me take a step back. We'll get to that.
Okay.
I think there's some things that I think need to be said for better
Okay.
context.
Sure.
So growing up, like, obviously, blonde hair, like, something's going on with this guy. Like, I consider myself an artist, right? So I love music. I make music. As a kid, I would always draw. I was kind of because of my dad, I was always walking around eggshells, and I felt like I couldn't express myself, right? And I'm a very sensitive person, even though I don't always show it. Like, I'm an extremely sensitive person, and I feel a lot of big feelings. And as a kid, like, that was who I was. It was just like big ball of like crybaby energy, right? But I couldn't, so because I was like, gotta make dad happy. Like, so I suppressed it, and that came out, throughout my life. Like, it started unraveling here and there. But the reason I'm saying this is, I grew up single father, so I didn't have a mother, right? And not having my mom and I are actually getting closer nowadays. I've made an effort to reach out to her and start just building that relationship. It's taking time, right? But we bonded over some of my own personal struggles that I felt that my dad wouldn't understand. So I reached out to her initially because I know that she had gone through something similar. So my mother had me when she was 18 years old, right? She's lived in San Francisco, I think, her entire life after that. She's still there. Hi, Mom. She left when I was about 3 months old, and I don't blame her. I don't blame her at all. Because, like, I'm 29. Like, I don't think I could have a kid right now, right? So much less that, like, thinking of being 18 and having a kid. Like, Jesus. Like, what the fuck? Like, but it took me some time to, like, understand that and develop my own empathy. And I think growing up, I was really self-obsessed with my own comfort because I had all these big feelings, super emotional, very artistic, expressive, right? I'd have my extreme highs from out and running, like, I wanted everybody to have a great time. And then, like, when I was down, everybody knew it. Just like that big main character sort of energy. And everybody's like, has to feel what I'm feeling sort of mentality, if that makes any sense.
It does.
Yeah.
all the feels.
So, and I think not having mom around for that contributed to that. Like I would crave comfort, and that set the stage for a lot of challenges that would come throughout my life, you know, up until like my early 20s, mid 20s. In regards to how the whole thing, you know, with my mom has again affected me growing up, like I wasn't very good at comforting myself because I didn't know how. And I didn't have people to do that for me. Like my grandma was around, but she was very, like, she cooked. That was her way of showing love, right? And I swear, I think you guys had a podcast episode saying that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I fucking get it. And I love my grandma so much. Like, but if you talk to her about emotions, she's like, check,
Yeah.
right? Check that. And it's not her fault. Like,
Right. They weren't taught that growing up either.
No.
So it's like, how do they process that
Yeah.
and show that for their
funny,
children?
one thing I do now is I always tell her I love you and I hug her.
Oh,
That's so precious.
And I get the first time she's like, just
Yeah. What are you doing?
the fuck is happening right now? And I was like, I love you, and I kept doing it, and now she's like on the phone, she's like, I love you, you know, with her. Oh, I
Hey,
love
that's
it.
you're breaking the cycle right
Yeah,
there.
that's what I'm trying to do.
Slowly but
Yeah.
surely.
I think that's a big part of what I'm here to do in my life is like break the cycle, right? I think it's the time, it's being first gen, right? I think that comes with the territory. And now again in regards to not having mom around and having to figure out ways of comfort, I turned to just like wanting to express myself to everybody, right? Because you know I couldn't tell my dad how I felt, and every time my dad was home, like he was working a lot, right? So when he would come home, it was like I gotta, right?
It's like you don't want to add to the burden.
No, and
or, you know.
he's working super hard. Like, shout out, Dad, you've done an amazing fucking job. You know, and like he did the best he could raising me. I think he's done a great job. But he didn't understand how to be there for me on the emotional front, right? Which is I think something I really needed as a kid. But looking back, that's like really set the stage to kind of develop me in those sort of spiritual ways, I guess, because there was actually something, a TED Talk, and I saw in 2020. It was just on YouTube. But Ethan Hawke, the actor, he talks about how certain people like poetry, some people like art, right? But that doesn't normally come until people have faced a struggle where they had nowhere to turn, right? They appreciate it in a different way. So instead of, he says, like, at some point when you reach that struggle in your life, a lot of people turn to poetry because it gives them meaning, right? It helps them make sense of, like, the struggles that they're going through, right? And on the flip side, like, if things, like, on a more positive note, like, when people are, like, super, like, happy, right? It also helps them to, like, put it into words because, like, oh my God, I'm so happy, or like, I'm so in love. Like, I'm literally taking this from what he said, but like, I'm so in love that I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know what to say, you know. And so that helps, you know, art, poetry, music helps kind of like put things in perspective. And he says that it becomes sustenance instead of a luxury, right? Because it's something that we turn to make sense of it all. And oh shit, I forgot why I said that.
It's okay.
I have
Shout out Ethan Hawke.
Yeah, shout out Ethan Hawke.
Yeah.
Right.
I have mild ADHD, but
But it's a form of expression, right?
Yeah.
Art is definitely a form of expression.
100%.
So
And
if
so
you
when
can't
you
articulate it, you put it on paper, you put it, you know, on a painting.
Yeah, so it's making sense of like what I feel, right? And I think that's what drew me to art, right, in the first place. And so I would, you know, I was eventually forced to turn inwards, right, and understand that one of my jobs is to learn, even though I grew up without a mom, right? One of my jobs was to learn how to comfort myself, right? And it's an ongoing process, right? Not knowing how to properly express myself, even though I wanted to express myself, and I tried to express myself to everybody as a kid, right? I want you to know how I'm feeling, why can't you understand? That was me as a kid. I was very energetic, very bubbly. I don't know if bubbly's the word, but I get up in people's faces, but then I also was super shy. Yeah. It's weird. It's a walking PSL contradiction. But yeah, and that eventually, something again I had to learn was to ask myself why I felt these certain things, and like what could I do, right? So I guess that's one of the great things about my dad that he taught me and instilled in me is that the answers are all within you. Yeah.
I like that.
Like, not saying that I know everything, no, but I think I generally I have to learn how to trust myself, right? I trusted myself with a lot of things, but with my emotions, I couldn't make sense of it. I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust those emotions. So I had that buried for, all the way throughout my teens, into college, into my relationships, which I think I destroyed, right? Burned a lot of bridges because I didn't know how to comfort myself, and I expected others to do it for me. So I think after one of, I guess, my last relationship, I was pushed out of, after we broke up, we were living together, and I was pushed out of the home, right? And she was living with our friends, which no longer I don't talk to anymore. And instead of me being smart and moving back with family, I was such a mess emotionally, and I wanted comfort, so I moved in with my best friends at the time, if that makes sense. And I'm still learning from that experience today, because that was 4 years ago, and I'm still reflecting on it. But yeah, I turned to a lot of substance abuse back in those days, right? And it was actually an ongoing thing from college, right? And just coming out of that, I didn't know how to regulate. And I would, especially being so hurt after the breakup, I was very, what's the word? Not abrasive, but I was very, I got triggered easily, super triggered easily. I was reminded that the answers were inside of me. So I kind of looked into, first it started with astrology. Yeah, weird enough, which is so I don't know if there's a lot of straight Asian males that are into astrology out there. And I think
I'll
that
never forget the time you said something about a Capricorn and you didn't know I was a Capricorn.
I remember that. I remember that. I hope you don't take any offense to that.
No.
Capricorns are awesome. Yeah.
Okay.
But so I turned to astrology. I had this co-star app, right, which my ex-girlfriend got me into at the time. I was like, oh, this is cool. Yeah, sure. There's these different parts of me, right? And I was I left that for a while. I didn't take it seriously until, I was going through my own struggles and trying to make sense of why things were happening and why I was feeling lost, right? Why I could no matter what I did, where I turned to, I was never feeling whole. So I started to look first at astrology, and just to make sense of because in astrology you have your different planets and houses, right? And they're all a different part of you. So they change, or they describe a specific aspect of your life, right? And then depending on what sign it's in, that will kind of add the characteristics to that part of your life. And that got me really curious for a while, and then I got into tarot. I was I didn't do tarot myself, but I would watch tarot. I would listen to podcasts about tarot, and I'm like, this is interesting. But then eventually I did realize tarot is also looking outside of yourself for the answers. So it's just been this whole going out and coming back to myself sort of thing, which I'm always constantly doing, right? Even to this day. But, you know, looking back at the way I grew up, you know, I think not a lot of people, or in my circles, right, had similar experiences, and I'm kind of glad that I did, because it's given me so much more perspective, and I'm a lot more of an accepting person for it, because like I've made a shit ton of mistakes, right? I've fucked up. I've been I've done bad things, whatever, right? And I think we all have. So but it's made me a lot more curious about myself and other people, right? And just I'm now like very focused on like how can we move forward, just like as personally or as society and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, the self-realization, it's just like, okay, now that I've recognized all these things of how, you know, personally for me, like growing up, it's now I'm like connecting the dots too. And I did resonate with you when you mentioned like looking within, because yeah, growing up, I couldn't really express myself. And yes, I had a sister, but we also were both processing like we can't express ourselves either. So
Yeah,
we don't
that's
express
tough.
ourselves to each other.
Yeah.
Growing up, we were kind of like pinned against each other.
In a way, you're feeding that like that belief
Yeah.
where you couldn't
yeah.
express yourself, right?
Yeah. And so then I just went within. Then you just start just trusting yourself, and sometimes you won't even go to others to like
Exactly.
ask for help or even get their guidance.
Yeah.
I kind of just like it made me more independent, right? Like I could only rely on myself. Like it's hard for me to like ask for help or have someone assist on something. I'm like,
Same.
oh, let me just do it.
Yeah.
It's going to be easier.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's like, oh, I don't want to burden you. Let me just do this.
Yeah.
And then you just pile all this stuff on you. You're just like, turns into burnout. And then you're just frustrated. But it's just like,
Jeez. Yeah.
same thing. It's like there's just boxed in. It's like, oh, I can only rely on me,
Yeah.
because that's the family support and the emotional support wasn't there.
Wasn't there.
Wasn't
Yeah.
there. So then I'm just like, I have to deal with my feelings. And yes, I suppressed it. I consider myself an emo kid. So grew up
Emo
as an
kids
emo kid.
are the most emotional kids.
I'm also talking about signs. I'm a Cancer, so a water sign. Oh, okay.
There you go. See?
Yes,
Yeah.
very emotional.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's like my parents didn't give me the tools to.
Exactly.
What do we do with these feelings, you know? Yeah. So then just hid it for so long, and then obviously, like you said, it came out in college and later in life, and now what do I do with it? So like it's all a journey, and I'm glad. I don't want to say it's mistakes, but it's like it's an experience, right? And
we didn't know any better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We didn't know. We weren't handed the tools, but now with the self-realization, it's like now I want to make things better for myself and those around me, and like how do I do that? Going to therapy and just talking about it, like talking about the feelings, because I do find now like expressing that it's just like the weight is kind of not on me, and then we could relate on the same or different experiences, and it's just like
you feel less isolated.
Yeah, you're not alone.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, you're not alone. And I think growing up as a kid with the self-reliance, it's just like no one else is feeling the same thing I am. How come you can't relate? You know, and we just now with my sister, we kind of go back to like how it was, and we talk about like dealing with our parents, and that's kind of strengthen the bond.
Yeah.
But
between you and your sister.
My sister and I, yeah. So, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, it's like these feelings were not processed, and it lingered.
What do you think
into adulthood?
What were some like the biggest realizations that you and your sister came to, looking back at how things were? I'm running this podcast now.
I know.
No, I
Okay,
love it. I
shoot.
love it. Yeah.
No, it
This
needs to
is
be
a
the back and
conversation.
forth.
Yeah,
It's a conversation.
Totally. Yeah.
But now you put him on the spot. Like the biggest.
I was just curious about like maybe the way that you and your sister treated each other versus how you do now.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes. So, growing up, and I don't know if anyone else can relate to this or have other siblings, but the sibling rivalry was very clear. You know, like our parents kind of pitted us against each other with achievements, accolades. How many straight A's can you get? Like, we were very studious, so academics was very important. But then it became like, oh, your sister did this, or oh, your sister got an A. How come you can't? Why do you have a B plus? Like things like that. Same thing with sports. We both did basketball, but towards high school, we had different sports interests. But looking back at it, I'm like, I don't think they ever went to any of my games. So
Damn.
I was like, again, felt like alone. Anyway, so
that's tough. Like, not feeling like your family isn't there for you, right? And you're just doing things. But I mean, at least you were in basketball or doing your sports for you
with a team. Yes.
And with a team.
Yeah. No, and I enjoy basketball. That was a choice. It wasn't.
Yeah.
Thankfully, they didn't force us into a sport. They were really just pushing academics.
Yeah.
They kind of pushed me out of sports, actually.
Yeah.
Because they're like, this is taking a lot of your time and energy. You're always tired, which is true. Like having practice in the morning and after school, and then like, when do I do homework and sleeping late? Like, and they posed the structure for us. For them, it's like the main things like get good grades.
Yeah.
Get into the right schools.
Yeah.
And everything else is secondary.
Same.
Like even dating, they're like, no.
Yeah.
But found a way to do that during high school. But so we were kind of pitted against each other in that sense, with the rivalry. And now as a mom, as a parent, I still see those things. Like my dynamic now with my mom is trying to break that cycle of how to treat a child. Because I'm seeing it now that I can advocate for my own son, and my son is the first grandchild in the family, and I could just see her doing the same thing, like comparing my son to someone else, and be like, hey, that kid's not crying, you should stop crying too,
And you're like, oh, I'm doing this now.
I'm like, hold on, he's expressing himself.
Yeah.
Like, let him, like, I want to give him that space,
Big props to you for realizing that.
For real, yeah.
I think becoming a parent now made me realize the parenting tools that our parents were given, and now it's kind of my duty and responsibility as a parent to be like, what am I handing over to my child now? So grateful to become a parent, and now realizing it, I'm just like, no, I'm not passing that generational thing to my own son.
I love it.
And I'm like, no, we're not, I don't want my kid to feel more insecure. Like there was no security growing up, and the emotions. And sure, there's a lot of stuff about, gentle parenting. Like there's certain ways and things that we can grab from in teaching our children nowadays. And being first generation, it's just like, yes, they don't know any better. But here as a first gen, I'm trying to show through being a parent and my son, hey, Mom, we need to change these things.
Yeah.
So like, and my sister is now a mom too. So like we're both.
Going
So this
through
is
it.
now we're bonding together as
moms.
moms
That's
so
awesome.
with our
Yeah.
mom to be like, that's not how we want to raise our child.
Yeah.
And that is a very tough thing with my mom, because family is a huge thing for us. And at least, our mom's side,
Yeah.
like family's huge. And so, and the talk back or going against the grain, that's new to her because we were always obedient.
Yeah.
Like, let's do what mom says,
Yeah.
or, and now my sister and I being parents, it's just like, we're going to change this a little bit. So cycle breaking for sure.
It's a
For sure.
full-time job.
It is.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks for sharing that. That's so cool. I didn't know that you and Carissa were like bonding.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love hearing that.
Well, I hope that you guys continue to get closer and just are able to, leave some of the past behind and move forward, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
At the end of the day, that's like the most we can do, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
just move forward
Exactly.
and grow and try and,
grow.
and
Yeah.
try. Dang, dang.
This is so good.
Grow
now.
and
Oh my gosh.
thrive.
Yeah. Cool.
I often turn things into a therapy session without knowing it. So I just,
Pat, we're gonna have you be the third host now.
Yeah, I know. Bring you
You're
back
so
in.
like you're a natural and you're so good. I'm like, ooh.
oh, thank you. This is actually my first podcast. I've
Woo!
never done a podcast before.
First
Okay, let's
pod,
consider
first
having him
generation
come back.
podcast.
So
Okay.
the definition of the American dream definitely started with my dad, right? Because he wanted to, in his own way, he wanted to be his own cycle breaker. Because his dad was not there,
Oh.
right? So he wanted to
yeah.
be there for me. And it's
see.
so funny story. I'm actually the second child that was born. The first one's not alive.
Oh, okay.
So I would like to think I have an older sister out there somewhere, and she's guiding me.
You
Right.
might feel that energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think she's also one of the reasons why I'm a more accepting and like kind of a pretty emotional dude, or at least like I accept emotions more. I accept the feminine part of myself a lot, which has been a struggle for a long time, but I'm getting a lot better at. Anyways, the American dream for my dad was like he wanted to. He looked up to his grandfather, which was like a very successful business person, owned like a farm, a few different factories in Vietnam or something like that. And coming here, he wanted to own his own business, which he's done, right? And I think for me, that meant me going to business school, right? So it was like, you got to get good grades. You have to do all your homework, right? You have to just always read. Like, he would make me read on the weekends.
Wow.
Like, I liked reading, but then I fucking hated when he told me I had to read. Then I didn't.
For how long? Like, is there a timer?
Yeah, it's like for like at least 2 hours, you have to. Like, he gave me homework assignments. He made me
On
email
top of,
them
like,
to
what
him.
you're already
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
I had that during the summertime. My parents would give us things to do because obviously who's watching
Yeah.
us. But yeah, we had to like, I don't want to say book reports, but there was a line item that says you need to read X amount of books
Yeah, yeah.
by the end of summer.
Wait, who did this to you? Your parents?
My parents, yes.
They like wrote it out like a contract.
Basically, there's like
Wow.
here's what like gave
That's
us like a
absurd.
daily like, hey, you know, you need to take this nap or
Yeah.
and I hated naps back then, but now I'm just like I want all the naps.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love sleep.
Giving some chores like, oh, go clean this up.
Mm-hmm.
They gave somewhat of a structure, but there were moments where like, yeah, the creativity where you know, I enjoyed home videos, like video cameras, and we would make stupid family videos that
That's
clearly
how this happened. Like, you kind of got into like videography.
I got into.
and
Yeah,
that's so cool.
just yeah. I remember spring break. Like we would film something. Just I don't know. Made a random skit.
Yeah.
We need to send Pat the music videos that we made. We made a Green Day Boulevard of Broken Dreams.
We
That's
did.
one of my favorite songs growing up.
I
I was
yeah, we'll
supposed to
send
be
it.
an angry mom. I was like 21. Okay.
And
yeah,
we hit a
she's-
lot of key points of like, you know, getting your school in grades
Yeah.
up, and you're like the scolding parent to.
We did a
one of our
Hotel
cousins.
California one where I was like kind of like the.
Oh man,
Like,
All right,
anyway,
you guys
Tiff-
it was a lot of fun.
she's got a lot of really good stuff,
but
but yeah, she's always had that talent, like creative.
always had that background. Of
Yeah. Absolutely.
video.
I want to see your work.
home videos.
Yeah.
I need to see your work.
You should.
Send it over.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like in another life, like that's like not even in another life. I feel like that's an avenue I haven't had the chance to pursue because I've always thought about like making videos for my music. Like I was like, oh, if I make music, I want to make my own music videos. So I have music, and I'm like,
And
Well, we
music's
should
great.
talk.
Yeah, we
There
should
you
talk.
go. Yeah.
you heard it here first. Yeah, my dad gave me homework assignments. He's like, you need to email me. You need to read this book by this week. and you have to email me summary.
Wait, what kind of books are these? Like
I don't
fiction,
fucking
like
remember.
business? Like
Dude,
I know. How thick is it? Is there pictures? Like those are my
they were not
questions.
pictures. No.
Wow.
I don't even
no, that's
remember.
tough.
Like I can go back to my old, like my first Yahoo
my
account
gosh.
Your email.
email,
Yeah.
and I can pull up like all the different things that I've sent him, like book report 1, book report 2. Anyways, I got so good at bullshitting because of it. So you guys heard of Kumon?
Yes.
Yeah,
The
so-
tutoring.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think because my dad was always busy, he stuffed me into Kumon. Like he's like, oh, it's a double whammy. My son gets smarter and I can work more, right? And I was a great student up until I had other interests. I'm like, okay, I like other things. I don't like this. So I would figure out ways to like, I would tear, like they would give us like paper, like homework assignments, like books, right? Small books. And like you have to like do math problems on each page. And I would rip off like the last 2 or 3 pages and like shove them behind the TV, like over like 2-year span. And then we moved.
Oh.
I got my ass handed to me that day.
Oh. That's so
Um,
funny.
Dad and I love him. We're working on it. We're getting better every day. His version of success had a lot of impact on my identity and what I was supposed to do. And I didn't like even I just wanted to make people happy, right? So I just wanted to make my dad happy. And I've always been like, I guess it's a Cancer
People
thing.
pleasing. Yes.
People pleasing, you know? It's like I would always want people to feel good, and I wanted my surroundings to be like in harmony. And I still feel that way. And I think I would do that to the detriment of my own self, right? Up until I would snap, and then I would just destroy everything, right? So that's happened like throughout my life. I make things great and I destroy it because I neglect myself, right? So, anyways, a lot of that identity changed when I got into hockey.
That's right. You like
So I played ice hockey growing up.
That's right.
So I was a pretty chubby kid, right? Growing up, like I ate a lot of food,
a lot of Filipino food.
I mean,
a lot of Filipino
yeah.
food, just Asian food in general. Like I ate fucking everything.
All that rice.
So okay, actually, funny story. My dad, I have a stepmom who's no longer. My dad and her not together, right? So we were living together, in our house, and I have 2 step siblings. Older sister Christina, shout out. Younger brother Eric, shout out. And oh man, I feel like there's so much to be said about my relationships with them that I wanted to say. Maybe another time.
Another episode.
Another episode, I guess. An excuse to come back. But I was really chubby at the time, and I was eating everything, and there was times when my dad and my stepmom got into arguments because she would hide food from me.
What?
Yeah. Oh. It was like that. I was like,
What?
yeah, it was like that. Like, I was
Wait,
like,
how'd you find out?
my dad told me.
Oh.
Yeah. This is actually, he told me like maybe like a year ago. I was like, no way.
Oh wow.
I was like, oh, I'm sorry. But like, yeah, it was that bad. Like I was eating that much. I was a big boy.
Wow.
Anyways, got into hockey. So I think one of the reasons why my dad wanted me to get into sports was because I was getting pretty big, pretty chubby, right? And I was very just soft. I was very emotional. I liked drawing a lot. So like, he was like, that's not gonna get my son anywhere, So like, let's like beef him up a little bit. Maybe the sports will set him straight. So we went to our rec center, our local recreation center, and they had like different sports you can sign up for. I went down the whole entire fucking list. I sucked at everything. My dad threw a football at me and it just hit me and I cried, This, I think, was like, 10 years old or something. And then the last sport was maybe basketball, which I was kind of good at, right? And then the last sport that I tried was ice hockey, the bottom of the list on the recreation center, like, bulletin board. Really fucking expensive sport.
Yeah.
So
all that gear.
a lot of gear.
That's what I heard.
So, in that regard, I'm just like, I can't believe my dad put me through that. I actually became really good at it. I started really late compared to a lot of my peers. So I was like 12 when I got into ice hockey. And we started this little in-house league, and I was like pretty big. I just hit puberty, right? So I was pretty big, and I was starting the beginner class, hockey classes on Saturdays with these like little, like 6, 5, 8-year-old, most of them Caucasian, white people, right? And like I was just like they're just out of place, right? But I didn't care. I fucking loved it because like I felt free.
That's so good.
Because it was like this, the cool breeze, right? When you're on the ice and you're skating around, right? I wasn't good at skating initially, but I picked it up really quickly. I don't know how, but I think it had something to do with like puberty for me hitting at the right time. And then that set off a chain reaction. I became good at a lot of different sports after that. But my identity shifted to like, oh, I want to be a professional hockey player now. And then like my dad was kind of like behind that for a while. I was like, yeah, okay, let's do that,
That's good. You got
So I
the
think
support.
That's why he was like, because I was pretty good. Like I was picking up pretty quickly. There was like promise, right? The only issue was, it was an Asian person in a white man's game. My height capped out. I'm like 5'8" or less. I don't know. Everybody at some point when I was like 18 or 17 or like high school age, all my teammates were like at least 6 inches or more taller than me, right? So, I mean, I was fast. I was really fast. I was great at puck handling, skilled, but I just didn't have the size. So, transition to college, first year of college, I was still trying to play hockey. I was still trying not to let go of that like American dream of being a successful professional ice hockey player. I didn't even realize it at the time. I'm like, oh, but the fact that I'm Asian, it's like even makes it even more unlikely. So, anyways, yeah, it was hard to deal with after I realized that I wasn't going to pursue hockey anymore. But then after that, I started making friends in college, and I was finally away from my dad. So like, okay, there's a whole lot more to learn now in college. So I developed social skills. Like I told you guys I was really shy. This is as a kid growing up, very shy. Big kid, super shy, quiet, liked art, and then somehow got into hockey. Fast forward to college, I'm like, all right, this is like people are actually talking to me, right? I think I was starting to like thin out a little bit. And like girls were talking to me, I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of nice. How do I talk to girls now? All right, let's play this game.
Google.
I did. I swear to God.
Internet. Google it.
Google. How to talk to girls.
Now it's AI, ChatGPT.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different beast now.
It's completely different. But yeah, I grew up Googling everything. Now it's like I don't think there's anything I'm supposed to be other than who I am. Because I think I read this somewhere. I don't remember what book it was. I think it was actually in Atomic Habits by James Clear. You're laughing. Yeah, we both got introduced to that book through work.
Oh, wow.
It's about changing your habits.
They gave book reports too.
Yeah. I'm getting PTSD right now. But something I read was that everybody, if people can cultivate, so everybody cellularly, everybody's completely unique, separately, just physically, we're different. We have a lot of similarities. We're human, but like at an atomic level, we're all different in some way. So we can cultivate what makes us different. That becomes our purpose. So I'm trying to figure that out now for myself.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
No, it does.
At this moment, yes.
But Pat, you had DM'd us your old AOL screen name. Can you tell us the story? First, tell us what the screen name is and what the story is behind that. We don't have to like include.
I don't know what the story is actually.
PP.
I didn't think of anything. I was just like, my initials are PP.
Oh, okay.
So-
I was thinking like PP, like I gotta go.
See,
PP.
I didn't realize that until after.
That's
So
what I thought of.
remember my uncle,
Oh,
my
okay,
older
okay.
uncle, who's 2 years older than me, like he would make fun of me. I'm like, why? He's like, because it's PP killer. I'm like, those are my initials. Like, no, but that's PP. I'm like, oh, I realized
That's what I
it
thought
too
of when you
late.
sent it to me. I was like, what? Okay.
Anyway, yeah.
Niener's Wiener is still better.
Niener's Wieners is legendary.
Do we want to pose a question to our listeners?
Sure. Well, do you think your sign is an accurate representation of who you are? If not, that's actually an invitation to look deeper into astrology and figure out the other parts.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's perfect.
Awesome.
And also talking about our signs, because that's always fun.
Something
That's always
for me to
fun.
learn.
Yes, but thank you so much, Pat, for joining us today. It was a great conversation. For those watching, listening, please, give us a like, subscribe,
Hit subscribe.
comment. Let us know, if your sign, zodiac sign,
Yeah.
What do we call
if
it?
your astrology zodiac sign,
your astrology sign matches your identity and how you perceive yourself.
and if not,
It's time to look deeper.
look deeper.
Time to look deeper. But yeah, if you can follow us on Instagram at First Gen Podcast. Those watching, I'll put it on the screen. But yeah, give us a comment, like 5 stars on Spotify, and yeah, we'll catch you next time.
Awesome.